Put a finger down if you're the IT guy for your family who live abroad and one day the internet goes down and your dad decides to factory reset the router and kill all VPN configurations, and now you're having to walk him through everything over FaceTime whilst his camera is pointing at the completely wrong thing. And this is where I wanted to introduce to you today a Twingate, because Twingate gets rid of all of those headaches. Now, full disclaimer, whilst Twingate did reach out to me and they wanted me to do a complete overview of their product, I have been using Twingate for a few years now and I am genuinely impressed. And they have some super cool features which I wanted to kind of show you today. I'm going to show you how you can get this configured, and most importantly, I'm going to show you how you can limit who has access to certain resources so you don't have to go through what I've just had to go through. It is genuinely a brilliant product, so let's dive straight in. Now, setting up Twingate could not be any easier. Literally just go onto the website and then you click on try for free, and here it's going to ask you for your email address and whether you're using this at work or at home. Now, I'm just going to use an email address that I've already got configured. I'm going to click at home and I'm going to click get started. Now here, I'm going to tick the boxes that are relevant for me. Now here's your first customization where you're not going to be stuck with some generic name. You can actually go ahead and set up your private network name. So you can call it your family name, you can call it, anything, homelab.twingate.com, whatever it is, obviously it has to be available. Now I've just called mine Bob Loves Home Lab. And then the same for the network URL. I'm gonna obviously duplicate that. It just makes managing it a little bit easier. Now here it's gonna ask me how I want to set this up. Now I'm gonna use Google because I've got Google configured, but you can obviously use any of the other SSO providers here. Now I'm just gonna go with Google. Now Twingate offers a really nice onboarding process and it's genuinely super easy to set up. Now just follow along with what we're gonna be doing here, but it is genuinely a minimal configuration process. You don't have to kind of download some mad config, send them somewhere, go into a router, do any kind of port forwarding. All of that is taken care for you. And then you're just going to have a super nice home lab network setup ready for you to use. Now, the first thing we need to set up is we want to connect our network. Now, there are multiple ways of doing it. I'm just going to be using a Linux server or a Linux box that I've got at home, but you can do this via Docker, Unraid. You can set this up manually, Terraform, Google Cloud, anything like that. Now, for me, the easiest thing is just to click on Linux because it just gives me a curl command and you just literally copy and paste it and it does everything for you. Now, one of the things is where you have to generate tokens. I'm going to click generate tokens and you always have to authenticate. I quite like that about Twingate. It can get a bit annoying sometimes if you're doing loads of work, but it is a kind of security first setup. So you're always going to have to authenticate here. It's going to ask you every single time when you're making kind of major changes to confirm that you are who you are. So once you've got that, you're going to get these access tokens here. Now, don't worry, in this video, these are demo purposes. I've got actually a separate network and this will be deleted. And here at the bottom, you are going to get step 4, which is a curl command. And I'm literally just going to copy this command. So I've just SSH'd into my home lab. Now, just to show you what I'm running here, I'm running a Mac Mini from 2014, running Fedora Linux. Honestly, it's super basic, but I just want to kind of give you a bit of a demo as to how to get your first kind of connector configured. So I've already copied the command and I'm just going to paste it in here and then hit enter and run it. And then once the connector has installed, it will automatically jump onto the next screen and it says, congratulations, you deployed a connector. And I'm going to click continue here. Now, the next thing on the onboarding is it's asking you to add your first resource. Now, a resource could be your whole network. So if you want somebody to just have access to the whole home network, by all means, you can configure this, or you can be quite specific with specific IP addresses. So for example, if you just wanted to add your Proxmox server or you wanted to add a specific server, you could do this. Now, I'm going to add my whole network for now because we're going to get a little bit more granular shortly, and I'm going to click create resource. Now, the third and final step we need to now do is we want to now set up our what's called client machine. So your Macs, your Windows PCs, your phones that you essentially want to connect into that network, because you have your resources. So there could be your Docker containers, there could be specific machines that you have on your network, and then you're going to set up who you want to have access to this. Now, in my case, I've already got Twingate running on my Mac, and all I really need to do is just download the Twingate client, very, very straightforward, and then literally install it. And then when it asks me what the network name is, it's the one that we've configured right at the very start. And I'm just going to click join network. It's just going to ask me to authenticate because it always does, just to make sure. And it's telling me that I have authenticated successfully. And if I now go back to my admin console here, we can see that my Mac is in here now. So we've now kind of done the hardest bit, to be honest with you. And it is now a case of kind of setting up our teams, adding our resources, and just making sure that it works as it's supposed to. And I'm going to show you a couple of things. Now, the first thing I want to go back to is our connectors, because Twingate actually recommends to run 2 connectors, just in case one goes down. That way your kind of whole network or your whole VPN isn't down, and it recommends to run 2. Now, I have this running on my kind of main network on a VPS, which is just essentially a mini PC in the cloud kind of thing. Now, you would essentially just set it up the exact same way as you've configured your first machine. It will give you a random name, but you can just click on the 3 dots and then you can rename it. And I've made it a little bit easier for me to see which one's which. And I've called it the Fedora Mac Mini, which is kind of my little server. Resources is where I wanted to show you a couple of things. So on this little Mac Mini, if you can see that here, I'm running on port 3001, I'm running Uptime Kuma, which is just a monitoring software. It is really, really good. And I kind of want to give you a super cool example for this. I'm going to go back to my resources. I'm going to click on resource, and here I'm going to call it Uptime Kuma. And here is where you can add specific IP addresses, and then you can be granular as to who has and hasn't got access to this. Now I'm going to say 10.0.50.31, and then I'm going to specify specific ports. Now at the minute there's a star in here, and the star just means all ports on that IP address, but I want to be quite granular, and I want it to be port 3001 for both TCP and UDP. And here I potentially could add a tag, and I'm going to call it uptime, for example, or monitoring or something like this. And I'm going to create the new key, and I'm going to create this resource. Now at the minute, we don't have any team set up, and I want to show you this as well in a second. We're kind of building our way up. So I'm going to click on everyone for now, which means everyone has access. So any member has access to this resource. Now, the next thing I want to show you is we can create teams. I can create groups where we have a group called everyone. Now I could potentially create a group called family, and then I can create one called Home Lab Bobby, for example, something like this. The groups don't have to have specific names, but just obviously makes it easier for you to manage things. Now, for my family, I could potentially add my mum in here. I could add my dad in it. I could add my brother in it, or any other family members, you know, granddad and so on. And I can then be very granular with their access. So if I wanted to, if I go back to resources, and then this is where the managing of access comes in. I can now, for example, say, I just want my family to have access to this resource. So it might be a Home Assistant, or it might be something like this. And I can now be very granular with who does and doesn't have access to this. I've now gone ahead and invited my second account. So we can see I've got my main account as well as the demo account here. And it tells you whether that's a member, how it was signed in, and so on. And in order to invite a user, literally just click on user, send them an email, and they'll just follow the steps and sign in. Now, if I go back to groups, if we take a look here, we've got under family, I've now added myself as if I was my dad, my other account in here. And if I take a look at Home Lab, I've added my kind of the main account into here. And going back to resources, this is where I can be really, as I said, granular with my Home Lab access. So if I only want Bobby in my Home Lab group to have access to this, I can essentially tick that box and then click grant access. And now if we take a look, we can see that only Home Lab Bobby group, or the Home Lab Bobby group, has access to that resource. So I could now add all of his routers into this. I could add all of his devices that he's likely to break potentially, and I can restrict him from accessing this. I could give him access to his file server, to his photo server, and I could give him access to Home Assistant. That's it. I can be really, really granular. And I think this is where Twingate really shines, by being able to be very, very specific with who does and doesn't have access and what resources they have access to. Now, we have very much scratched the surface with this, but if you start adding family members in, you can, for example, remote into their machines because they'll be part of your network at this point. So you can add a resource, you can add their network in, for example. If they have the client installed, you can add that and you can traverse their full network through the kind of the power of Twingate. So you could, for example, remote into multiple machines, or you might want to remote in at work. And this might be something that you suggest to a colleague at work, or you might want to set this up on your parents' PC where you need to remote in and frequently do stuff, because we've all been there. How difficult is it to kind of get TeamViewer working or VNC or anything like this? It just ends up either costing you money because they suspect you're running a business, or setting up the files and sending all the documentation and so on. It's just really difficult. Whereas in reality, all I've done is send an invite to my dad, or I can send one to my granddad or anyone else, and they literally just install the client, they join the network, I add the device in, and that's it. I can then go ahead and remote in. And I genuinely really like the product. And as much as they have sponsored this video, all my thoughts are my own because I have been using Twingate for such a long time now. And I just think it's just a brilliant product, and I highly recommend you go ahead and check it out. But I want to know from you what you think of this product, because I really like it. As I said, I've been using it for years. I'm a big fan, which is why I'm recommending it. But with that said, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one.